Love is in the air here at Wells Fargo Arena. Join the Iowa Wild on February 14th for Love in the Wild Night and February 15th for Pink in the Rink. Get your tickets now at iowawild.com.
Jason Aldean, Full Throttle Tour 2025, powered by Patriot Mobile. When the lights come on. Friday, September 19th, Wells Fargo Arena. With Nate Smith. You set my world on fire. And Ray Lynn. Jason Aldean. On sale now at iowaeventcenter.com. Jason Aldean Live.
Welcome in to the Channel Seed Studios for Bigger Than 12 on Iowa Everywhere on a Sunday reaction. I'm Jake Brend here in Des Moines, Iowa. Or is it Des Moines? I don't remember. One of the two. Joined by Derek Duke down in Texas. Derek, how's it going, my friend?
Doing great. No hangover today like last week's show. I watched some college basketball on Saturday, yesterday, and then went to a local rodeo on Saturday night. And, speaking of hangovers, Jake, you went to a bachelor party this weekend, and it looks like you didn't miss a wink of sleep. What's up with that? I thought you would be passed out on a couch somewhere.
Yeah, no, it was a casual bachelor party. 8-9 guys. We had an Airbnb down at Lake Rathman. Fun weekend. It felt like camp. Kind of, we were in this nice Morton building, almost turned into a cabin on the inside. It was a fun. Had a couple beers, glass of wine, but nothing too crazy. Not the rowdy crew, which is fine because I needed to find time to squeeze in some Big 12 hoops, and that's the disclaimer for today's show. Is I was only able to watch Iowa State and KU yesterday, so those are really the only two games that we'll be talking about today. I know that's not our normal show here on Bigger Than 12, and I'm truly sorry. I know everybody will be okay with that, but
You didn't miss much, folks, outside of the big two that we're going to talk about here. Everything else was kind of just lopsided or just not the best of matchups here. But, we'll get into some of these games here in a bit.
Yeah, what I realized yesterday is, I promise that, trust me, I care about this podcast. I love this podcast. Even if we were not recording today, I would be locked in to the Iowa State-Arizona State game, and I'd be locked into the KU-Houston game. Like that, podcast or not, work or not, paid or not, I'm doing that. One incredible game, and then one is just my team, of course. So I would have been locked in no matter what. But we won't waste any time getting into it. Before we get into Saturday's recap, I'd like to give a shout out to our friends at WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. They are the presenting sponsor of Bigger Than 12 here on Iowa Everywhere. In 2025, we're well underway. It's time to stop saying Happy New Year because we are well within 2025, and tax season is not far away. And it is the 25th year of WealthCharter, and they are celebrating their 25 years. And the best way to, show your appreciation for WealthCharter is to go and use that 25 years worth of experience that they have to set up any retirement account, no matter what stage of life you're in, and get some help with your taxes and financial management heading in to 2025. It's the best time to do it when there's not really a way to spend money right now when you're sitting inside freezing all day. So go and give Tim Hawkins and his team a call at wealthcharter.com to schedule an appointment at their office in Ankeny. Let's not bury the lead. Houston, Kansas, an instant classic. This game was over, and then it wasn't, and then it was over, and then it wasn't, and then it was over. Was this game a sign of Houston being clutch, or was it Kansas choking?
It's a cop-out answer for me, but It's a little bit of both. Kansas choked that game away on Saturday night, but Houston also took over that game. Kansas up by 6 points with 90 seconds left in the game. And plus, you're at home. That's an inexcusable loss by the Jayhawks. And Kansas 7-point lead at halftime. And it was funny because Fran Fraschilla talked about on the broadcast how the first 3 minutes of the second half can change a game. And boy, did it change. Houston went on a 17-4 run to open up the second half, led by 6 points, with 12 minutes actually left in the game. And to their credit, Kansas did respond by going on a run of their own. In fact, they had a 16-4 run. But for me, the shift happened to open up the second half of that game. But I'll say this, when push comes to shove, I mean, Houston snapped. Milo Suzanne had himself a night, made a pair of key shots in those final 90 seconds of the second half. Then was the guy who stole the inbounds pass down by 3 with 5 seconds left and got the ball to Malik Wilson, who made a clutch 3 to tie it up, send it to a second overtime. But just looking at the stat sheet here at some of the stats at the end of the game, Kansas shot 56% from the free throw line, had twice as many turnovers as Houston did. That alone is a recipe for disaster against a team like Houston. But I must give Houston credit. I mean, they went in Allen Fieldhouse. They didn't flinch. That's a tough place to play. But good teams find a way to win those kind of games, and the Cougars found a way to get the job done on Saturday night in Lawrence.
Yeah, I'll agree, and I'll preface that Houston deserves so much credit. They're one of the toughest, if not the toughest team in all of America. And like you said, great teams find a way to win. They deserve credit for that, and I will give them their flowers in just a second. But don't get this twisted. This was a choke job by Kansas. In regulation, up 6 with 1:20 left. Not only do you blow the lead, Kansas didn't even attempt a single shot or free throw in the final, 80 seconds of that game. They took a 5-second call under their own basket when they had a timeout. It was a disaster in regulation. You go to overtime, in control in overtime, up 6 points with 18 seconds left at the free throw line. Missed 2 free throws. All you needed was 1. You go up 3 scores. Not only do you miss both, allow a 3, throw the ball away on the inbounds. I get if the shot clock's winding down, you got to get it in. At that point, you're just better off chucking it down the court, because at least then, if it's a turnover, Houston's got to go to the length of the floor, and instead they were able to set up a wide open 3. It was horrible execution down the stretch by Kansas. Here is a stat from Jared Burson on X that I came across this morning. Per KenPom, Houston had a 0.4% chance to win when KU had the ball in a 6-point lead with 20 seconds remaining in the first overtime. That makes Houston's win the most unlikely in any of the 1,487 games between AP top 25 teams over the last 15 seasons. If it felt unprecedented, it's because it was. To not only come back from down 6 in regulation in improbable fashion, but to do it again in overtime, unbelievable from Kansas. And trust me, there's a little bias added into this. There's a little juice on my side from an Iowa State perspective, because it's looking pretty clear right now that this is a 2-horse race for the Big 12 regular season crown. You can throw Arizona in there. I'm fine with that. But when you win an Allen Fieldhouse, you're not losing many games. Houston still hasn't lost a Big 12 game. We're nearly halfway through the Big 12 season. They sit at 8-0, and they already own a win at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I was mad at Kansas as an Iowa State fan. A Kansas win would have really helped Iowa State's cause down the stretch, but it was lost composure and mistakes by KU's upperclassmen. Dwan Harris, he missed the free throws. Zeke Mayo, he had the turnover, thrown it in. Hunter Dickinson got targeted on defense. It was a team effort to blow that game, and I'm sure Bill Self is distraught looking back at that game already.
Yeah, the one time you root for Kansas as an Iowa State fan, they just completely let you down.
It's the safest bet in the world.
Yeah.
Rooting for Kansas at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. They even got a couple friendly, the fog calls down the stretch, and you thought, or even Rylan Griffin gets it going. He's this highly sought after transfer from Alabama who performed on the biggest stage last year, hasn't really done anything all year, and finally gets his moment. All the stars were aligned, and Houston still finds a way, and that leads me into what I wanted to talk about next. I think you could make the argument that this Houston team is better than last year. I want to hear your argument for or against it before I make my point.
Man, that was probably the toughest question on the rundown that you sent me this morning. I mean, last year's Houston team won the Big 12 regular season title, made it to the Sweet 16 where they fell a little short against Duke in the tournament. If you look at the numbers, actually, it was quite shocking to me to see how similar that these teams were. This year's team's averaging more points per game and are actually holding opponents to 2 less points per game as well. But I feel like we're almost splitting hairs there when it comes to some of the numbers when I compared the two. The one thing that impresses me about these past two Houston teams in general is the way they played defense. Last season, first in the conference in points allowed per game. This year, same exact story. And, this year's Houston team may not have a Jamal Sheed, but I think you can make a case that this Houston team may be a little deeper down the bench than it was a year ago. But for me, all the answers to that question can't truly be answered right now. This question will be answered come March, because as great as that Houston team was a year ago, they didn't get to a Final Four. They didn't win a title, but this Houston team still has a chance to accomplish a lot of their goals still ahead of them.
Yeah, and that Houston team last year really was a victim to the injury bug. If Jamal Shead doesn't get hurt against Duke, they win that game, and I think they probably go to the Final Four. The argument that I would have for this is their big men, their front court have ascended to a new level. I think you could argue at points last year it was a weakness of their team. And I thought earlier this year, watching their games against Auburn, watching their games against Alabama, I thought the lack of Shed was making it really hard on the big men to operate, and I have been completely proven wrong. I even said earlier this year on this very podcast that I think Houston can be just as good as they were last year, but I don't know if they can be as good down the stretch without Jamal Shed, because he did it. He willed them to so many wins last year, and I have been proven so wrong. That's back-to-back Saturdays where they've won games on the road in crunch time that they really, you could argue, had no business winning. And I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, making my Shed point. But the argument for it is yesterday, Cryer and Sharp combined for 17 points in Fog Allen Fieldhouse, and you won. That is the sign of a great team, a tough team. But I'll take the cop-out answer as well. That's still, I think you could argue that's their first impressive win of the season. They've had some close losses to great teams like Auburn, like Alabama. That win on the road at UCF was impressive, not from a resume perspective, more in the fashion they did it. They handled West Virginia at home, which we don't know what type of win that is anymore. So they've got a long ways to go resume-wise. But nonetheless, so impressed with their ability to find ways to win, and they have proven my little doubts wrong.
Yeah, can I just say this addition of Houston, I know you could say whatever you want about the football program and where it's at right now, but this is why you bring in a program like Houston to add to already a loaded basketball conference, and now you throw Houston in the mix. They win the Big 12 year one. Year two, they're already looking like they're going to be right there at the very end to compete for another Big 12 title. So just a great addition, Brett Yormark, to bring in a team like Houston and this kind of program. Also, I guess I should give a shout out to Bob Bowlesby. He's really the one that made this kind of happen from the get-go a few years back. So just a great addition for the Big 12 to have Houston in the conference.
Yeah, and they've been the class of the conference since they got there. Iowa State has to dethrone them. I know Iowa State's ranked higher in the AP poll and by some metrics, but this is Houston's conference right now, and they've been in it for 17 months, 18 months. So so impressive what they've done so far. We'll talk plenty of Houston throughout basketball season. Before we move on to Iowa State, I do want to talk about Kansas and some of their problems. And this is a problem that will eventually come up because KJ Adams is going to get healthy, but I think Bill Self has a legitimate decision, a tough decision to make between Flory Badinga and KJ Adams, because Badinga's been really good ever since Adams got hurt. I think my complaint for Kansas all year long anyways has been the offense is so clunky when both Adams and Dickinson are on the floor. It's really hard to space the floor with KJ Adams out there. And it's not like Badinga's a stretch big by any means either, but I think what he does on the defensive end makes up maybe for Adams' weaknesses, and it feels like it flows better. And I went on evanmaya.com this morning to see if the data maybe backed up the eye test, and with a minimum of 180 possessions, Dickinson and Badinga is KU's second best two-man lineup. So essentially when they share the floor, their efficiency difference is almost 40 points per possession.
Wow.
Or not 40 points per possession, 40 points per game possession adjusted, essentially, which is really, really good. And that's a pretty large sample size. And that's not to say Adams should be benched. I think Adams should definitely have a role when he's back. But with what the eye test has shown me, I think Kansas is a better team with Flory playing, I guess he'd be the 4. He seems to me like more the 5, and Dickinson slides over to the 4.
If Kansas wants to win games, then KJ Adams should be the one coming off the bench. We've talked about the poor play of Adams several times on this show, and he's been a weak spot for the Kansas lineup. And after watching Flory play, I think the answer should be clear here. I mean, Badinga had a career night against arguably the best team in the Big 12, where he shoots 70% from the floor, drops 19 points. And get this, in KJ's last 5 starts, he averaged a little over 5 points per game. And Flory comes in and has back-to-back double-digit scoring games. He's a better rebounder. And this offense, as you said, has a better flow to it when he's on the floor compared to a guy like KJ. And I don't care if KJ, when he comes back and he's healthy, like Flory should be the starter here moving forward. And if Bill Self is too stupid to realize that, then I think Kansas deserves to lose games.
Yeah, and I think Houston was going to win that game in double overtime no matter what happened, but Flory did foul out early in that second overtime, or was it at the end of the first overtime? Either way,
yep,
he fouled out, and it completely changed the game. Yep. I think after Houston did it again, I don't think there was any mental barrier that Kansas could cross anyways, but not having Flory out there on the court certainly changed the game. Big picture, though, what an instant classic. Reminded me of the 2016 OU at Kansas thriller. I think it was a triple overtime game. Buddy Hield, Isaiah Cousins. One of the great Big 12 basketball games of all time. And I think this fits into that mold. That's a game that Houston fans will go back to watch YouTube highlights of for the next 50 years. And they should, because anytime you get a win, and Fog Allen Fieldhouse as a road team is incredible. To do it like that when you had a less than 1% chance of winning several times throughout the game, it's even better. And that's championship material right there. That shows me Houston's good enough to win it all.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the best games of the conference you're probably going to see all year, unless we have some miracle game come up here in the second half of the season. But for now, it's definitely the best game of the year so far.
Speaking of national championship contenders, the Iowa State Cyclones easily cover on the road against Arizona State. Not much to talk about. 16-point win. Good day from Kurt Jones. If you check the box score, looked pretty stress-free. I can assure you, watching the game, it was not stress-free. Just how impressive can you make this win for Iowa State?
I'm probably going to be the odd man here out here and say that I wasn't shocked at the result. At the end of the day, Arizona State isn't a great team. Iowa State is. I think end of story on that conversation. But what I will say, the way Iowa State took over in that game in the second half was impressive. Went on to outscore Arizona State 43-21 in the second half on the road. That's what is really impressive to me. Iowa State shot the ball well from behind the arc. They were solid at the free throw line, but even still, the offense to me was still pretty much just kind of average in the first half. Defense was also shaky, but I don't know what happened in the second half, but a switch flipped. And I love talking about the offense and Curtis Jones, who we will talk about here in a bit, but that second half defense was just so damn good. Iowa State forced 18 turnovers in the game, 17 points off those turnovers. And get this, forced Arizona State to miss 7 of their 8 final shots of that game. And just in general, you hold a team to 21 points in the second half on the road. To me, that's the big story here. Overall, I was probably more impressed with the second half rather than just the outcome of the game itself. But and let me say this, that second half Iowa State team is a Final Four caliber team and is the reason why some people believe that this team is a true national title contender.
Yeah, that win shows to me growth, because for the first time in my lifetime, probably for the first time, I honestly don't, I would have to ask someone like Bloom or John Walters, who was around for these teams. I don't know how much of a target on their back the Pfizer Tinsley teams had, because even though they ended up being a 2 seed, I know those teams were kind of ranked in the mid-teens for a lot of the year before ascending really late. So this might be the first time ever that Iowa State is this marquee opponent that is circled on the calendar when they're coming to town. And that is hard to deal with. Kansas is so used to dealing with that. It's been that way since the sport of basketball was invented. When Kansas is coming to town, the place is on fire. You want to beat Kansas. I think Houston is probably used to that from their days in the American, where they were this Final Four caliber team going up against these smaller programs. It's the Super Bowl when Houston comes to town. Right now, that is what Iowa State's dealing with. You look at their 4 road games in Big 12 play, maybe not as much Colorado, but the Texas Tech, the West Virginia, the Arizona State, these teams are coming out and punching them in the mouth, and they are fired up, and you can tell what the motivation was heading into that game. In the Texas Tech game, Iowa State responded like no other. That's still their most impressive win of the season in my book. In West Virginia, they didn't play great. They got it to crunch time, and West Virginia was better down the stretch. They found themselves in the same spot on Saturday against Arizona State and closed the game on an exponential run.
For sure. Very impressed.
It started on the defensive end.
Yep.
And I think that's what is encouraging to me going forward is if it hasn't already gotten through to the team that you guys are going to be targeted, and it's going to be different. Like you're not catching anybody by surprise. We all know that Iowa State wasn't going to be catching anybody by surprise right now, but it's not just another game when Iowa State comes to town. And that changes the dynamic. I know that as a former Division III tennis player. Anyone who's played any athletics in their life knows the difference of playing this small town that you don't really know, or you're playing the private Catholic school. We want to win. It changes so much, and I'm impressed with how Iowa State handled that. And then there's Curtis Jones.
Who?
Curtis Jones is a lifesaver. I don't want to know what Iowa State's record this year would be without Curtis Jones. They would not be a 1 seed. I can tell you that right now. And everyone's talking about his stats overall, or his stats since he became a starter. He's averaging 18.5 on the season. Obviously a career high, team high, most most points that an Iowa State player's averaged since Mariel Shayok. It's almost 5 years ago now. But what I want to look at is his away stats. In 6 games played on the road, Curtis Jones is averaging 23 points a game. He's shooting 46% from the field, 43% from 3, and 90% from the free throw line, while only turning the ball over 1.5 times per game. He has been Iowa State's most important player. He's the only reason that was not a 20-point game at halftime yesterday, that a hole that, frankly, they were not going to climb out of. And Curtis Jones is proving why he is the Big 12 Player of the Year. That performance was one that will go down in Iowa State lore. 33 points on the road, heat check after heat check. And he was, again, for a large stretch of the game, Iowa State's only offense. And we're running out of words to say about Jones, and I don't know how much higher he can ascend, because he has already ascended so much higher than I ever thought when he transferred in from Buffalo.
Yeah, and as far as the Big 12 Player of the Year conversation goes, I think if Iowa State keeps winning games like the way they have been, I think absolutely he's definitely the front runner of that conversation. As of right now, I'd probably still say it's neck and neck between Jones and Javon Small from West Virginia. Both are excellent players. But the one thing I will say up until recently is, Curtis was coming off the bench and was still putting up absurd numbers, while Small was always the guy for West Virginia. And I looked this up. In 5 of his last 8 games, he scored over 20 points, averaging nearly 23 points a game in his last 8 starts here. And then Curtis Jones, over time, probably will likely be that front runner for the Big 12 Player of the Year if he keeps playing the way he has been. Obviously, we're going to talk about a big test here they got coming up on Monday. But right now, he's on another level. And I don't think it's crazy to say that there's probably maybe some separation between maybe him and Small at this point. But still, those two guys, to me, are in that upper echelon of players for the Conference Player of the Year.
Yeah, in West Virginia, they've got to start winning games. Back-to-back losses this week. Got owned at home by Arizona State, and they got served on the road against Kansas State, which are...
Woof. Bad.
We can talk about Arizona State. I think they're a little bit better than a bottom dweller, even if that's what their record shows. But an 0-2 week when you host one of the bottom teams in the conference and you go to arguably the worst team in the conference and you walk out of there without a chance to win. And I don't want to speak too much on the K-State game because I didn't really get to watch much of it, but I did watch their game against Arizona State. And right now, West Virginia somewhat reminds me of TJ's first team, the Isaiah Brockington, Tyrese Hunter team, where at least when they don't have DeVries, they are clearly well coached. They play hard as hell. They're really tough. But if Javon Small isn't playing like the Big 12 Player of the Year, just like if Isaiah Brockington wasn't scoring 25 or if Tyrese Hunter wasn't scoring 25, those Iowa State teams were really susceptible to get beat. And I think that's kind of what West Virginia is going through. And that's normal because we talk all this talk about Javon Small being the Big 12 Player of the Year. Tucker DeVries is probably a better player, and they don't have him. So I don't want to criticize West Virginia too much. It feels like they're regressing to the mean a little bit. Got off topic because we were still going to talk about Iowa State. I wanted to talk about these kind of blend together. The Iowa State takeover in Tempe that we saw all over social media, heard from Iowa Everywhere's Keith Murphy, Chris Williams that were there. Probably 60-40 Arizona State to Iowa State split in a home game for Arizona State. That was not a neutral game. And I think there might be a bit of a rivalry developing between Iowa State and Arizona State. Do you sense that?
I don't know if I'm ready to go there yet. I'm not ready to call it a rivalry.
A bit.
I know like Arizona State's football players were there and they had the Big 12 title football trophy there asking, where's theirs? But maybe these two can build a rivalry over time. But It's not like Iowa State, Iowa, or Iowa State, Kansas State, or even Iowa State, Kansas. Like those to me are like true Big 12 rivalries. But the one thing is with the new look Big 12 is that some of these schools just aren't familiar with each other just yet. I mean, over the course of time, I'm sure rivalries will form naturally, but I don't think I would say like Iowa State and Arizona State are just like true rivals at this point. Like it's going to have to build up over time. Like if these two continue to have battles over the years, I think it's fair that, a natural, it's going to form. But for me, I don't know if I'm ready just to say that just yet.
Yeah, there's no way you can say it after it hasn't even been a full year.
Yeah.
But what I will say, between the football game, between the football players taunting Iowa State fans and the basketball team yesterday, there is way more juice when going up against Arizona State, looking forward to that next matchup in football or basketball, than there is with any of the 8 newcomers that have come in outside of Houston basketball. But there's a big mutual respect that I feel between Iowa State fans and Houston fans. But there's a little chippiness in the game yesterday. I just feel a little bit different about going up against Arizona State than I do UCF, BYU, Arizona, Cincinnati. So maybe it's the start of something. And who knows if Kenny Dillingham and Matt Campbell are at their programs for the next 15, 20 years. And those programs are always in the top 3, top 5 of the conference. You'll be playing a lot of big games. And who knows how long Bobby Hurley's there, but I think it's very easy to hate a Hurley. So there's a lot of stuff maybe forming there. One last point I wanted to make about the game. Not a great game overall from Keyshawn Gilbert, but I think it goes to show his toughness. He had a huge part in that late run, which is really what Iowa State needs from him. The way he plays, he's probably not going to be a guy that is scoring. Like I think of I don't know who a great player would, a Zeke Mayo. A Zeke Mayo he feels like he's probably scoring once every 3 or 4 minutes. He's slowly building up over the game, and then you look down and he's got 23, 24 points. Gilbert is more of the, he got a layup. Oh, he got a steal, another layup. Oh, he hit a 3. He's kind of an avalanche type player. And when he can do what he did yesterday in that last 5 minutes, that's what they're going to need from him mostly in the NCAA tournament. Would they like more consistency? Absolutely. But as long as he's locked in at the defensive end and is capable of having those stretches where he's the best player on the court for 5 minutes, it's really, really dangerous.
For sure. And I don't think Kansas really has the depth that Iowa State has either from that standpoint. And then speaking of Zeke Mayo, like Mayo has to drop like 20 for Kansas to be competitive with these upper echelon teams in the Big 12. So I agree with you there. They have to, like Kansas has to play, like their stars have to play well, because if they don't, they will lose by double digits.
Yeah. Well, our next show, we're going to be previewing Iowa State, Kansas, and Fog Allen. It feels like we just had it in Hilton.
We did. Yeah, we did.
All right, let's move on to an Iowa trivia question. Before that, I'd like to give a shout out to Freedom Tire. Drove down to Rathbun. I went to Freedom Tire a couple months ago. Car's still all in good shape. Took the interstate down. Can't recommend Freedom Tire enough. Quentin Crowner and his team will take care of you. He's a big Cyclone fan, big supporter of what we do here at Iowa Everywhere. And it's all locally owned. 5 stores, one in Ames, Altoona, West Des Moines, and Urbandale. They do it all. They'll change your oil. They'll do any car maintenance, but they do specialize in tires. So if you're in the market for new tires or need something patched up, Freedom Tire is your spot to do it. You can visit freedomtire.com. We're going to bring Aiden in for this week's Iowa trivia question. I'm excited for this one.
All right. This one is courtesy of Jake.
Oh, great.
How do you pronounce the town 5 miles east of Ames? Hint, it's named after a state home to the Sin City. Don't overthink it here.
Can I look at a map?
So
five.
it's one of the 50 states,
Okay.
home to the Sin City.
I don't know why. Maybe it's too early for my brain to work. Is there?
Home
A well, I know what state it is, but I'm trying to pronounce it.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
probably a different pronunciation than what I'm used to.
Maybe it's not, though. Maybe it's a trick question.
I'm gonna say it's I don't know, Nevada. I don't know.
Oh, you got it.
Is it
Yeah.
Nevada? Okay, there we go. I was trying to come up
26th
with
best
a clever.
small town in America.
Why is it the 26th?
I don't know. Also, I'm not sure if that's up to date or not, but that was on their town sign forever.
I mean,
Okay, I don't want to knock the town here, but that's kind of a very odd thing to brag about being the 26th. Like if you were in the top, if you were like one, I
Hey,
kind of get it.
There's a lot of small towns,
it
man.
shows they're not lying, though.
Yeah.
If I see a sign
That's true.
that says
They could have rounded
we're
up to 25th.
Yeah, if
and I
I
would've
see a
been like,
sign that says we're the best small town in Iowa, yeah, right. But if
It's
you're
like-
the 26th or
yeah.
the 34th, like, oh yeah, man, I'm in the 26th best small town in America.
I guess I can appreciate the honesty.
I mean, think how many small towns there are.
That's
If
this
you're
is very
20
random.
If you're 26th, you're in the top. You're in the top 1%. Nevada is a beautiful town.
Nevada. Yeah, okay.
It's always funny. A lot of media members are not Iowans. A lot of Des Moines media members. So they have to come to this state and realize all of the ridiculous pronunciations we have. So we have a Madrid, Iowa. It's spelled just like Madrid, but it's pronounced Madrid. We've got Nevada. There's a lot. And then our counties, I think I've explained this to you. We have a lot of counties named after cities, but half of them are not the county where their city is. So like Des Moines is not in Des Moines County,
Yeah, that's a little weird. That's a little weird.
but Clinton is in Clinton County. So there's no consistency on it. We're way off track.
That's all right. Maybe they were just drunk when they drew the maps and the counties.
No, and Iowans probably. All right, let's talk Big Monday. Iowa State's not coming back to Iowa for a while. They're staying in Arizona, enjoying the warmth. Because it's Iowa State at Arizona on Big Monday at 9:30 on ESPN. Oh, that's prime time, baby. I love it. I love it. I typically get off work around 9 on Mondays anyways, so I'll be watching on my house, maybe pouring myself a glass of Steeple Ridge bourbon to tune into this game. Well, what's the biggest key matchup in this game?
I think just for me, just looking at Arizona, just looking at some of their stuff overall is, they're really good offensively. I mean, they're third in the Big 12 in scoring, and it starts with their three guards. Caleb Love probably doesn't get enough love just from the media in general, is one of the best players in the Big 12, or at the very least, he's in the top 10 conversation in the Big 12. So for me, he's the engine to that offense. And then you have, Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, who have played well this season. Another pair of names to keep an eye on, Trey Townsend, and then Anthony Del Orso. Del Orso actually is capable, to me, of dropping at least 15 to 20 from time to time. Townsend has kind of had his moments. He's kind of been up and down this year. But overall, I think the Wildcats, solid rebounding team. But their one flaw, offensively at least for me, is they don't shoot the ball from three very well. And speaking of threes, Arizona actually gives up the third most three-pointers in the conference, which I know Iowa State isn't loaded with a bunch of great three-point shooters, but that is something to keep an ay on. But just in general, I don't think Arizona is a great defensive team. And for Iowa State, if they can get Curtis Jones going, I mean, watch out, because if they play just up to 80% of what they're capable of playing, I think they'll be okay in this game. But for me, it's got to start also on the defensive side. Like what they did against Arizona State, they need to continue that to do against Arizona. Get those turnovers and get some points off of them as well to get off to that fast start.
Yeah, Arizona, in terms of conference-only offense, which is more what I look at, they've been better shooting the three ball. They had that horrible end of the game against Texas Tech last weekend. But really, they're towards the top of the conference in everything on offense except offensive rebounding. And that sounds like a negative, but in this game, I think that's a bit of a positive. Because I would envision that Arizona will take a similar approach to what West Virginia did and not try and crash the boards at all. Get back, set your defense. Because that is how you beat Iowa State, especially when you're playing them at home. If you can get Iowa State playing a half-court game, playing an ugly style of basketball, trying to survive in the half-court without Mail Momcilovic, that is how Iowa State can be susceptible. That's how we saw them dig themselves a hole against Arizona State. It's how we saw them lose at West Virginia. So if it's a half-court game, like I kind of envision it will be, I think the biggest matchup is going to be the Presidents against Visar, the sophomore, and also Akawa, the junior forward, which Arizona doesn't really have a great front court. Visar has had his moments. He was awesome a couple games ago against, I believe it was Baylor. Yeah, against Baylor. He completely took over, but he's a really raw forward. I think Iowa State's going to need a lot from Joshua Jefferson, from Deshaun Jackson, from Brant Chatfield. Because I think there's a chance to pound the ball inside. And if you get a few of those to go early, you got to crash a little more, and then you got to hope guys outside are making shots. It's got to be. You're not going to need it because you probably know it's going to happen. You're going to get yours from Kurt. It's just kind of a matter at this point if it's 18 points or if it's 28 points. We're in that territory for him. But if Taman Lipsy, Keyshawn Gilbert can knock down a couple threes, that could be what makes it a balanced attack. But that all starts down low with the Presidents, I think.
I will say they can't do what they did in Tempe and Tucson and get away with that. That's probably not going to happen. Like, they can't play that poorly in the first half.
Yeah.
And beat a team like Arizona, because Arizona's, to me at least, way better than what Arizona State is. A much better team just in general.
Yes.
So we're talking about Arizona as one of the top 3 Big 12 title contenders in this conference. So this is just in general, this is a huge game for Big Monday. I mean, I'm looking forward to this one as much as I did for Kansas and Houston on Saturday night. This is going to be a massive game in the conference.
Yeah, as much as conference realignment sucks in a lot of ways, games like this are awesome. You're playing at Arizona for the first time, maybe ever. Definitely first time as conference opponents, first time in a long time. Going to an awesome atmosphere, nationally televised primetime game. It's going to be on fire. Again, this is a team in contention for the Big 12. So they have every reason to be motivated on top of playing the number 3 team in the country. I can't wait. It's going to be a tough test for Iowa State. They need to get off to a fast start because, we know if Iowa State can get to crunch time, they can beat anybody in the country. What you don't want to happen is you don't want this to be a 15-point game early that you expend all of your energy trying to come back against a team that will most likely be ranked in the top 25. A fast start is key, which Iowa State has really not had so far. I guess they haven't had a single fast start on the road this year. Between Iowa, Colorado, Tech, West Virginia, Arizona State. None of those games have been fast starts. So could this be the game maybe that changes that trend? I guess we'll have to see when we make our game picks.
And this is the toughest. This is probably the best team that they're going to play on the road right now, at least up to this point. So keeping your composure is going to be crucial, not turning the ball over. But if Iowa State leaves the desert with 2 big wins, that's great heading into the week. So that would be huge momentum for them.
And we're kind of at the point right now where, is Houston going to lose more than 2 or 3 games? At this point, it's not looking like it. So I would put that magic number at 17 wins right now to probably have a shot to earn a share, but I'm not ruling out the possibility of Houston going 18-2 either. So if 17 is the magic number, you've already got one loss. You're probably going to need to go 1 of 3 or 2 of 3 against Arizona, KU, and Houston on the road. I think Arizona is probably the most winnable of those 3 games. So if you can leave the desert 2-0, it's kind of it could be a statement towards playing for that Big 12 regular season championship.
Damn, this conference is just so freaking tough to win. It really is. It's the toughest conference in America, basketball wise. It's just so damn hard to win when you have so many great teams like this. And then, even your bottom tier teams, you're going to have teams that play really well at home. You're going to have some tough road environments to go through. So this conference is no cakewalk to anybody. I don't care what basketball school's in this conference. I don't care if Duke or anybody else was in this conference. It is a damn tough conference.
No doubt there. Duke is not in a tough conference. They just played probably their last hard game of the season, and it was a road game against Wake Forest. And all due respect to Coach Forbes and the Demon Deacons, if at Wake Forest is your toughest game of the conference season, conference is a joke.
Agreed.
All right, we'll move on to picks in just a minute, but now we got to do the random Big 12 player. I'm locked in. I can't wait. I'm getting it.
Aiden, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. This one I hope is a little bit tougher. So this guard spent his entire college career at one Big 12 school for 4 full seasons. 4 full years, should I say. His numbers got better each year, and in his final year, he finished second in the Big 12 in scoring, averaging 16.5 points per game. However, his final season was cut short due to his team not being very good prior to the pandemic. His coach is still at the school today, and his senior year, his team finished in the bottom half of the Big 12 with a losing record in conference play and finished with a 16-16 overall record.
Is it an NBA guy?
He is in the NBA.
Okay.
Is it Desmond Bain?
You got it.
Nice.
Desmond Bain from TCU.
I don't know if I would have gotten that.
I tried to pull one from the kind of the bottom half of the conference because, I started talking about these teams that were pretty good and some of these players, but I want to get one that maybe didn't, was a great player but didn't finish that well for his team.
So this comes to my mind right now. Pre-expansion. Self, Dixon, Scott Drew. Are those the only coaches that would have been here in the COVID shutdown year that are still in the conference?
I think that's right. I might be missing one, but I think that sounds right to me. And I didn't know if Jamie Dixon was going to make it, honestly, over the past, but he's been there since 2016, which is kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, Desmond Bain. Okay. So we're going to bring back the minute of fame for picks. And I didn't write anything down because if I'm being honest, I kind of forgot I wrote it down on the rundown. But before we get into the picks, so I won last week. Had a 3-0 week, no big deal. I'm going to make my minute of fame Desmond Bain. I don't know if you saw this. TCU's going to retire their number. Retire Desmond Bain's number. And I saw a lot of Iowa State fans, or just a lot of Big 12 fans in general, clowning them for this. And it kind of made me upset because, one, why does it matter? Why are you concerned with what TCU's doing? It's not a rich basketball history at all.
No.
The Dixon era has been the best era of TCU basketball, and it's not like they've really reached that high of heights. And history's got to start somewhere. Bain is a really good NBA player. He's probably a top 35, top 40 guy in the NBA. He was there for a lot of the good years of TCU basketball. I know senior year wasn't great, but he got better every year. And the point I would make is specifically to Iowa State fans, which I'm one of them. This would be to my people, to my fan base. I would be wary of clowning a school for retiring a number for a player that you don't feel worthy, because I think in 20, 25 years, there's a chance Brock Purdy has a statue or something like that outside Jack Trice Stadium. And there's going to be fans of bigger schools be like, really? He wasn't even an All-American. He wasn't even close to a Heisman finalist. And your response will be, yeah, but he's Brock Purdy. He changed around the program. I would just be wary. I'm not comparing Desmond Bain to Brock Purdy in any sense, but to talk down on a school with less history is kind of what we get mad at other fan bases doing to us. So there's my little minute rant that I did not know I was going to be doing until you gave us a random Big 12 player.
And I think Bain actually came in the same year Dixon got in. I think he was part of that first team under Dixon at TCU. So he's definitely a guy that helped try to build that foundation at TCU, which, as you mentioned, is not necessarily known as a great basketball program just in general. I mean, they've had a lot of bad years over the years.
All right, let's make some picks.
Let's do it.
Trust me. I hope if you wanted to laugh at me or clown on me for picks during football season, I hope you got it all out of the way. Because, folks, I'm off to a 5-1 start this basketball season, 3-0 week last week. Derek's treading water, 2-4, 1-2 both weeks.
Who?
It's a tough league. It's a tough league to pick, but I'm telling you, I'm not repeating my football performance. We'll just say that. We got 3 games for you based off of Ken Palm's spreads. We'll start with the one we just talked about. As of right now, it looks like Iowa State would be about a 1.5 favorite, almost a pick 'em, at Arizona for a 9:30 tip-off on Monday night.
I'm just going to say I think Iowa State wins this game. I feel great about Curtis Jones, but most importantly, I feel great about the ability to shut teams down for Iowa State. I think, their defense is great. Arizona struggles with that. I don't know. I think give me the Clones to come out of Tucson with the win. I just feel good with the way the Cyclones are playing right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of firsts. I don't know how Iowa State will respond to this 2-game road trip. It's really uncommon. But if there's a team in the country that I like being in a unfamiliar position, it's a TJ Otzelberger coach team. I think Iowa State finds a way to win this. Curtis will be Curtis. I think Jefferson has a pretty big day, and Iowa State gets to the under 4, and it's a close game, and they kind of out-clutch the Wildcats down the stretch. I'll also take the Cyclones. The next one, man, this line jumped out at me.
Ugh.
Whoa, did it jump out at me. Baylor is heading to Provo to play BYU Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN. And according to Ken Palm right now, BYU would be favored by about 2.5 points.
I did not know where to go with this one. This one to me was tough. I know Baylor has been one interesting team, and so is BYU. I mean, the Cougars are a completely different team at home this year, and I think that's what makes the difference. I think that home court advantage goes to BYU, and so does my pick. I'm going to take the Cougars here to win and cover.
Oh, man. Might be right in our picks. BYU just beat Cincinnati by 28 points at home.
Yeah.
They are a different team at home, there's no doubt. My gut tells me you got to go with Baylor, right? Scott Drew, underdog against a team that he probably shouldn't be an underdog against.
Nope.
But I think the analytics tell me go BYU. And honestly, this line might come out Baylor 2.5 when it comes out in Vegas in the next couple days. I would play BYU. I'm going to play BYU in this spot as well at 2.5. And then we'll close out Houston at West Virginia. I swear these teams just played. It's because they did like a week and a half ago. This one's in Morgantown, Wednesday night at 6 o'clock on ESPN Plus. As of now, Houston looks to be about a 7.5 point favorite.
These are two of the best defensive teams in the Big 12. Houston just won a thriller, and West Virginia had a big letdown against Kansas State. That that spread makes me want to take West Virginia because I know Morgantown's going to be rocking, but I don't know. This Houston team's just on a different level. I'm going to take Houston to cover here.
That's coming down from an emotional high.
Yeah.
West Virginia's had a rough couple of weeks. We know what that atmosphere can be like when there's a top 5 team in town. Houston wins the game, but this stretch for them has been, I'm sure, taxing physically, mentally. Give me West Virginia to cover the 7.5, even if I don't feel 100% great about it. Do not bet that. Do not bet that. I promise. That's a bad bet either way.
I actually flipped my pick. Originally, I had Houston winning, West Virginia covering, but I decided I just can't trust West Virginia right now. I like the way Houston's playing. I know, again, Morgantown will be rocking, but I don't know, something about the Cougs this year. So I'm going to take Houston to cover here and get the win.
All righty, I think that's going to do it. A good little Sunday show. I think the first podcast I've recorded the day after a bachelor party. I don't know how many more of those I'll have in my life, but the first one was a success, I think. We had just an instant classic to respond to, which obviously helps the cause a little bit.
Better man than me. I don't know if I'd be alive after a bachelor party on a Sunday. I'd probably be dead.
Oh, we all know that.
Yeah.
We'd have Aiden filling in. Maybe we should have done that today anyways.
Oh, man.
In all seriousness, thanks to everyone for tuning in. We couldn't do it without the listeners. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe, leave a review wherever you list your podcasts. Thanks to Freedom Tire, WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax, Channel Seeds. This has been Bigger Than 12 on Iowa Everywhere.